The show where there are no penalties, nothing is offside, and everything is fair game. This is The Gloves Are Off.
Welcome to The Gloves Are Off. I'm Moses Wilder. We've got a great show for you tonight. Lots of great topics. Of course, the All-Star Game's going on, so we thank you for joining us. Instead of that, speaking of All-Stars, I got an All-Star panel here. Greg Buchanan.
Oh, here, okay.
You came fresh from the Stampede.
Yes.
I know the GMC Rangeland Derby was a fantastic 10 days. It would have been even better to be there. You got to experience it broadcasting live. How's it going?
Yeah, a lot of fun, and it's nice to be home. It is a marathon, not just for the drivers, the outriders, and the horses, but it's even a marathon for the radio guy, too. So.
Imagine if you were Les McIntyre calling every single race. The guy is amazing. And you've done a fantastic job as well. Speaking of guys who've done a pretty good job, we have Andrew Brethauer has filled in for you, Greg, a few times here over the last few weeks, and comes on again here this time as a guest and looking to defend his over-under crown. We'll see what happens later tonight.
Okay.
The 3 in a row.
But we'll see what happens with you, Andrew. How's it going?
Good.
The guy's doing his homework if he's winning all the time.
Yeah, no kidding. Or that, or
I
he's just getting
don't-
cheat sheets.
I never did homework in high
Hand
school.
signals after the hand signals in the back. That's
All
it.
right, well, don't stop telling the New York
Yeah,
Yankees
yeah.
that because they'll get obviously a little upset. But I want to start with the GMC Rangeland Derby because I know, Greg, there were some great races. What can we say about Kurt Bensmiller? It seemed from day one to the very end, he was the man in control. And was there any doubt in your mind that Bensmiller was a guy that you could say, he's going for the $100,000, he's going to win the $100,000?
Well, you know what? If you look at the first 2 days, there's probably a lot of doubt. Kurt Sutherland looked unstoppable for the first 2 days, and he came out, and everybody, he had tremendous outfit, and no discredit to Kurt Bensmiller, but the previous week in Ponoka, Kurt Sutherland won that race. That had a late outrider, thus Kurt Bensmiller wins the Ponoka Stampede. But the way that Kurt, he's just a very level-headed guy, and that's an important thing for a 10-day marathon like the Calgary Stampede is barn management, making sure that you're hooking the right horses, making sure those horses are getting the rest. Friday, going into that final day to determine the top 8 and the aggregate standings, Kurt had a chance to win the aggregate, but at the same time, he rested his outfit to be ready for Saturday and be ready for Championship Sunday. So Kurt had a bigger goal in mind, and it paid off at the end.
And talk about a guy like Jason Glass too. I think there's another guy easily could have won it. Got the misdraw of the 4-barrel, but there's he won the aggregate.
He won.
So
the
there's
aggregate.
a guy. I don't think anyone discredited him. He had a lousy start in the dash, so that really just took him right out of the running. But there's a guy. I wouldn't have felt bad taking him from the 4 coming out of that race. So
you know what? When you're up against so many good drivers like that, when you're coming off barrel number 4, it's just another race because you know what? Your chances of outturning Gary Gorsom 3 and Ray Crowdo on 2 and Kurt on 1. It ain't going to happen. I think in that dash, the only person that could have beat Kurt Bensmiller could have been Ray Crowdo Jr., and if they didn't turn well, Gary Gorse probably could have.
Well, Crowdo wasn't too far out, especially at the end, and did a fantastic job. What about some of the guys that we saw in the races? I know it was an emotional time for Brian Labicane, considering what he's done, 35 appearances at the GMC Rangeland Derby. And to go out, I know he missed out on the Dash for Cash, but the way he went out, that must have been pretty special to watch.
Yeah, you know what? I had goosebumps because you could see it kind of developing, and it was a special night. And the way the race unfolded, you kind of had a feeling the 3 drivers with them, Jamie, Doug, and Roger, were kind of pulling back and knew, you know what? It's not about winning a heat here right now. It's about honoring this guy that's been around, for four decades, and what he's done for the sport. And the way that the Calgary Stampede crowd, and that was over 30,000 people there that night, and the way they saluted him, it was pretty emotional. All the outriders coming into the infield and all tipping their hat to him. So, and the great thing about it is that while Calgary honored him that day, I hope that that final day in the Lloyd finals, whether he's in the dash or not in the dash, that all the fans in this area will be there to honor him as well.
And it's the great thing too. You got the race with Jamie as well, which is how it's going to set up. I think for the CPC finals here. They're not going to let up here though, which is going to be even better.
Yeah.
But I think the way he was running that race, it was his race to win, and he showed that's a classic Brian.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with his horses too, because of course they're very well. He has his son Jamie, who might benefit from that. His son-in-law as well, BJ Carey, might benefit from that as well.
They might, the thing for Calgary too for Brian is that he gets the Guy Wiedek Award, and that's the thing that kind of gets overlooked and very deserving for him. And there's been some tremendous, not just chuck wagon stars, but there's been tremendous rodeo stars, legendary stars that have won that award in the past. So it was nice to see Brian honored with that. And it's going to be a very special day on that Sunday in Lloyd when it comes up for Brian's last race.
Move on to the NSRBL very quick. The Montreal, or Midwest Expos, I should say. Not quite Montreal, but they did play well enough to win 5-4 over Unity in Game 1 of the postseason. Very interesting for a team that really hasn't done much in terms of getting the playoffs. Only made the playoffs last year as their first ever time. They really haven't been a team that you would think, this is a contender. But considering where they've come from and how they've developed over the last few years, players they picked up, Reed Flash being an example, you saw players like John Hines develop into an MVP. Are the Expos a team that possibly could do some damage or make some noise in the postseason?
I think they're definitely a semifinal team. I think we're going to see them with all the other two Lloyd teams as well. Showed last night they're that blue-collar chip-away team, grind it out and get victories. They had that tale of two seasons kind of thing. They started off 6-1, then that collapsed to a 6-6, and then they had to fight at the end to kind of fit in there. I think they're going to take Unity. They've beaten them twice. Last game of the season, very handily, plus the playoff game. So now they're going down to Unity in a week. After they come off of provincials, I think Midwest has a pretty easy time moving on.
I think anytime it comes down to your arms, it comes down to your pitching. And you can chip away and you can get runs, but you know what? If you can't limit the runs, that means your pitching, your fielding becomes key. So I think it comes right down to arms. Do they have enough arms to get through it?
Yeah, we'll see what happens, especially in a span where you're playing so many games in such a short amount of time. We will get to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, so I want to talk about them being in the bye week. This is a very tough time for the Riders because, of course, last year a lot of hype, a lot of veterans, a lot of great leadership from offense, defense, special teams, even the coaching staff. Now you see a couple of guys missing. Of course, no G. Roy Simon when it comes to on the field. You look at some of the guys, Dressler, Sheets, no longer there. Offense looks a little suspect, and then you have the defense taking careless penalties when it's at crucial times. Guys, do you think the Riders need to push the panic button anytime soon?
I think it's too early. You're 1-2 in an 18-game season. I think I don't like when media tries to focus on panic button, and I know that's kind of our job. We do that, but
we got to sensationalize something.
We got to do something, but I can't stand when we have to. It's 1-2. They're going into a bye week. There's so much season left. They could technically speaking go 5-13, and we're not talking about this anymore. So I think it's not yet. A couple more weeks, and I think once it's bad for them to the bye weeks right now. So now people can talk about that so much, but I don't think it's no time to panic.
You love the passion for Saskatchewan Roughriders in the province of Saskatchewan, and you get a passion from the media, you get passion from the fans, but it can turn against you in a hurry, and it has. But there's questionable coaching decisions. I hate to kind of point the finger at Corey, but why are you running the ball late in the second quarter, and then your running back fumbles it after trying to stretch out for 17 yards. They kick a field goal, and it kind of rolls from there. And then you bench him for the entire second half. Does that make any sense at all? Now, nobody wants to be a running back there because Allen fumbled the ball, he's benched. Hugh Charles fumbles the ball, he's benched. Now they're bringing in Ford from Winnipeg. And it's a revolving door at running back, and they can say whatever they want to say, but there was very questionable decisions. Throwing the ball when you're inside the 5-yard line, knocking on the door for a touchdown. Why aren't you handing it off to a running back? Why isn't Double D running it in? But no, you're throwing the ball. Very questionable coaching decisions.
There are a few plays, to Darian Durant's credit, where he threw some perfect balls and they were dropped.
Oh, yes.
And that has also been another issue. What compounds this whole thing is the way Drew Willy has played in Winnipeg. And speaking of which, guys, we're going to get to that in a second because we're going to talk about Drew Willy. We're going to talk about the Eskimos. And, of course, both the Bombers and Eskimos meet later this week. We'll see what these guys think coming up after the break.